I am a 65-year-old woman whose hands are mapped with the wrinkles of 1,000 sacrifices. When my husband died, Stephen was just a toddler, and I vowed that he would never feel the absence of a father's shadow. I worked 3 jobs, scrubbing floors until my fingernails bled, and washing clothes in the freezing cold. Also, Stephen could carry the heaviest books and wear a clean uniform. I didn't just raise him, I worshipped him, believing that my old age would be spent in the warmth of his gratitude. Tragedy arrived on a Tuesday that smelled of rain and sorrow. Sarah sent me out to buy groceries because she felt tired, even though a driver sat idle in the garage. As I stepped onto the slick, wet asphalt, a car skidded out of control. The screech of tires was a scream in the night, followed by the sickening, wet crunch of my left leg. I lay in the cold mud, the rain washing away my tears, calling Stephen's name until my voice failed. As Stephen grew, he became a tall, handsome man with a voice that commanded rooms. My heart swelled until it nearly burst when he landed a high-paying job in the city. I told the neighbors, with tears of joy in my eyes, "Look at my son. He is my gold." I was blind to the truth that gold is soft. It can be melted, twisted, and reshaped by the wrong hands. I had given him everything, my youth, my health, and the very marrow in my bones. The day Stephen brought Sarah home, I opened my arms and my heart, welcoming her as the daughter I never had. I spent my last bit of life savings on a diamond set for her, wanting her to feel like royalty. But the moment the wedding lights faded, the air in our home turned to ice. Sarah didn't see a mother to love. She saw a free servant to exploit, a nuisance to be managed. We had a house full of servants, but Sarah had a dark, twisted plan. She would secretly pay the servants to stay in their rooms, bribing them into silence, and then she would thrust the heavy, dirty mop into my trembling hands. "The floors are dusty, Mother," she would say, her voice like honey laced with arsenic. At 65, I was down on my knees, scrubbing the cold marble until my joints screamed, while the people Stephen paid to work sat in the shadows, watching me in ashamed silence. I realized too late that Sarah was a thief of souls. She pocketed the servants' wages while forcing me to do their labor. I became the secret, invisible engine that kept the mansion running, a ghost in a faded sari, while my daughter-in-law bought designer bags with the money she stole from my sweat. I stayed silent, swallowing my dignity every single day, because I couldn't bear to break my son's heart. I woke up to the sterile sting of antiseptic and a pain so primal I couldn't breathe. My leg was twisted into a shape no human limb should ever take. The doctor was grave. "The bone is shattered. We must operate immediately to insert an iron rod and bolts." I looked at the door, my heart hammering, waiting for my son to rush in and save me. But when he finally entered, he wasn't my son. He was a puppet on a string. Sarah stood behind him like a dark shadow, her hand gripping his shoulder. Before he could even say, "I love you," she gasped, "Stephen, she's 65. It's a waste of money to put metal into an old woman who will never walk again. She's at the end anyway." I watched Stephen's face, my soul screaming for him to defend me. But he just looked at the floor, his heart blinded by her toxic whispers. For 3 agonizing days, I lay in that bed with bone grinding against bone, sobbing in a darkness no light could reach. Sarah visited me only to hiss into my ear, "You're a burden now, a broken toy. Why don't you just die quietly and let us live?" She convinced Stephen that my life wasn't worth the cost of the surgery. My son, the man I fed with my own hunger, agreed to let me rot in my own pain. When Sarah finally left for a moment, I called Stephen to my side. I grabbed his hand, the same hand I used to kiss when he was a baby. "Stephen," I whispered, my voice a ragged thread, "I am not asking for your money. I am asking for my dignity. I gave you 28 years of my life. Give me one operation so I can die on my feet, not as a dog in this bed." Tears finally filled his eyes, and with a shaking hand, he signed the papers. The surgery was a descent into a nightmare. They hammered a heavy, cold iron rod into the very center of my bone. When I woke, I felt the weight of the metal and the screws, a literal burden in my flesh. But that physical pain was a shadow compared to the look of pure disgust Sarah gave me when I was brought home. She looked at my crutches as if I were a piece of garbage that had crawled back out of the bin. Sarah turned my recovery into a slow execution. She would place my water and medicine just out of my reach, watching with a smirk as I struggled and failed to move. If I whimpered, she told Stephen I was performing for his pity. She even began to pinch my leg right where the rod was inserted, finding a sick joy in the muffled screams she forced out of me while Stephen was at the office. Stephen became a ghost. He worked late, he avoided my eyes, and he stopped coming into my room to kiss my forehead. He chose to believe the lie that I was being difficult and that Sarah was a martyr for dealing with me. I felt the iron rod in my leg grow colder every day, a freezing iron wall between me and the child I had died 1,000 deaths for. Fate finally intervened one afternoon. Stephen forgot his laptop and returned home through the back entrance. He walked silently, but as he approached my room, he heard a sound that turned his blood to ice. It was the sharp, echoing crack of a slap, followed by Sarah's venomous voice. "Eat your scraps and shut up, you old hag. You should have died on that road. You've cost us enough already." Stephen stood paralyzed behind the cracked door. He watched as Sarah grabbed my injured leg, the one held together by iron, and squeezed it with all her strength just to hear me scream in agony. He saw my bruises, the stale water, and the terror in my eyes. The scales finally fell away, and the man I had raised finally woke up from his nightmare. The door didn't just open, it flew off its hinges as Stephen charged in, a roar of pure paternal fury leaving his throat. Sarah jumped back, her face a mask of horror, but she couldn't hide her cruelty anymore. Without a single word, Stephen's hand moved, a thunderous slap that sent her crashing against the wall. And then another. He wasn't hitting a woman, he was striking down the monster that had tried to kill his mother. From that day on, the Viper was silenced. Sarah was given a final choice: respect the queen of this house or vanish forever. The servants were restored, and Stephen himself began to take charge of my therapy. He would sit with me for hours, his strong arm around my waist, helping me learn to walk again on my iron leg, making sure I never felt the weight of my own pain again. From that day on, the Viper was silenced. Sarah was given a final choice: respect the queen of this house or vanish forever. The servants were restored, and Stephen himself began to take charge of my therapy. He would sit with me for hours, his strong arm around my waist, helping me learn to walk again on my iron leg, making sure I never felt the weight of my own pain again. This is not just a story. This is the burning truth of my life. My leg still carries that cold iron rod, but my heart is finally blissfully light because my son is home. He understands now that a wife is a partner, but a mother is the sacred foundation. We are healing together, one step, one heartbeat at a time.